You say the Mama Podcast.
Mama Podcast.
Hi Mama, you're listening to the Mama Podcast. It's Sumaya here, the co-founder of MamaME app. MamaME is the first app to exclusively connect mothers across the Middle East, connect with like-minded mamas and creates lifelong friendships. At Mama, we are all about connecting mamas to empower women. So let's join together and make this mission a reality. Hi Mama, this is the final episode of season 1 and I am so excited to bring this one to you. Firstly, I'd like to thank you so much. I'm incredibly grateful for the time you have given me for listening in and joining me on this journey of season 1. There's so much lined up for season 2, but let's get back into what's important and let's talk about this week's episode. I'm joined by Sehr Sarwar, who has 8+ years experience in PR, government relations, public affairs, and she lives and spends time between sunny Dubai and London. She's the founder of S&S Strategic Comms, and she actually handles the PR for MamaME and oversaw our launch event at Tania's Teahouse, where we welcome so many of the Mama community. This is an incredible episode for small and medium-sized business owners and even those mamas that are considering starting their own business. Sehr is incredibly intelligent and talented, and she shares all her PR tips for small business owners. So let's get stuck in. Hi Sehr, thank you so much for joining me on the Mama Podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you because you do the PR for us at MamaME, and this is a topic I know that will help so many small businesses and moms that are sort of starting up businesses. So I think if we could start off with who you are and what you do, that would be awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on the Mama Podcast, Sumaya. My name is Sehr Sarwar. I handle the PR for a couple of auspicious brands in the UAE and the UK, looking after PR, of course, for the wonderful MamaME app. I'm coming to you live from London at the moment, where I'm based between London and Dubai. I'm quite fortunate to say that I did grow up in the Middle East. I spent my formative years, my schooling, both primary and secondary in Dubai, where I'm a member of the alumni of the Dubai College School, which I'm sure some of your listeners may have come across. I then left Dubai for university in London, where I studied Middle Eastern studies. So life seems to have a funny way of coming full circle, because I then landed a role in a public affairs consultancy where I learned all about the world of lobbying, public relations, and communications, essentially. So I've now founded my own boutique consultancy, which is called S&S Strategic Comms, where I'm the founder, and where we're based between Sufouh in Dubai and Westminster in London.
Amazing, great places to be based between. I'm sure you're so grateful to be able to sort of go between the two places. If we sort of dig into the idea of PR and what PR is, so because there's so many different aspects when you're building your business and getting your information and your business out there, can we touch on what PR in itself actually is and what that involves?
So PR, of course, stands for public relations, and it's really all about the way that your brand or an organization would communicate with the public. So think about it as, how are you going to be promoting yourselves? How are you building up a positive reputation? And how are you engaging with your stakeholders and forging out a public image for yourself? So the way that your brand is represented in the media, of course, has a major impact on the way that your customers are essentially going to be perceiving it. So the role of your public relations agency is very much to try and influence the media and other key stakeholders in how to represent your brand positively and how to go about communicating those key messages.
Does that mean social media is something that's included in all of this sort of in PR, or is it more sort of traditional media?
Absolutely. It's anything and everything that comes from the inward perspective of your organization communicated outwardly to your stakeholders. So that could be your social media strategy, your public persona, your image, your conferences that you might be exhibiting at or speaking at, panel discussions where you might be placed, anywhere that your brand is publicly on the platform.
And a lot of sort of smaller businesses may not have the funding to put towards public relations or asking an agency to support them in sort of getting the message out in this way. I know you have sort of shared a few tips and tricks with me in terms of what you think would be sort of the things to focus on when you're really getting your message out there. And I'd love for you to share that with our listeners, because especially in the early days of building a business, sometimes, you know, you have to prioritize that money and the budget to other things like building a product or creating a product if you are creating a product.
You're absolutely right, Sumaya. And we totally understand at S&S that not every small business owner is going to have the means to be able to carve out a budget to devote to PR, or, you know, big bucks lying around to spend on a retainer with a devoted public relations agency. So yes, there are a number of things that your listeners can start to think about doing independently, all without needing a jazzy PR agency on side, of course, at the very beginning. I think just to take it back to basics, the first thing I would say is read. So you must familiarize yourselves with the media environment. Try and consume as much print, broadcast, online media as possible. You know, you need to think about it really from the perspective of where you see your brand being mentioned and how would your messaging slot into the media space. So the more that you familiarize yourself with the local papers, the international media landscape, the more confident you're going to be in where you see yourself on those pages. So are you picturing yourselves in Reuters, Bloomberg, or are you on Dubai One? Are you more geared up to be a radio guest on Dubai Eye? And the more you know about that landscape, the more comfortable you're going to be with targeting those places.
And how do you go about targeting these places? Because obviously with someone who works in the space and has worked in the space for years, you have obviously built relationships with these people. And that's one of the advantages you get when you work with an agency.
Sure.
But say for someone who has never had access to anyone who's done media, where would you sort of start to approach these places? Where do you find them?
I think reading and familiarizing yourselves with them is so crucial. So you start to see the same journalist names alongside articles that you're reading, and realizing that, you know, this might be the journalist who specifically writes about lifestyle brands in Jordan, for example, and that is the journalist that you need to trail and pick up on, so that you make sure your press releases are reaching the inbox of the right person. The great thing about social media now is that a lot of these journalists have wonderful exposure on Twitter or Instagram themselves, and are usually quite accommodating and inviting of engagement with their readers. So if you were to see someone who's frequently doing reviews of hotels and spas, you could quite easily look them up on Twitter and drop them a line there. And it could even come as a very personal, candid message to say, oh, I really enjoyed your review of the Royal Mirage Christmas hamper, and I'd quite like to send you a little something to let you know that I'm doing something similar. So it's all about it reaching the right person.
I think that's really exciting for someone who is like starting up a business, because I think sometimes we just assume that, you know, if someone's a journalist, then they're not accessible, but actually they're just people, right? Like, just like you and I, they're just normal people, and they like to receive messages, and they're actually just, friendly and normal people, which is great.
Absolutely. And you'll notice now the world of journalism has changed so drastically that the commenting space is usually the first place that I go, at least, which is where, you know, you scroll down to the comments on an article, and there's quite frequently a great camaraderie between the readers and then sometimes the journalist as well, getting involved with the discussion there. So it's in essence, it's quite a flattering thing to do, is to drop a line to a journalist and let them know that there are people out there who are consuming your content, but actually maybe through a critical lens have something that they'd like to add to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really exciting for them as well, because now on social media, you're so aware of who's engaging with you. But with traditional media, there's still sort of this barrier where they're not really aware of who's reading and who's consuming the information. So, yeah, I can imagine as a journalist, it must be quite nice to receive that kind of message.
Definitely. And that leads me on to the next tip, or the little secret PR tip that I'd offer as a bit of advice to small business owners with limited budgets, which is just simply to be organized. So if you take it back to thinking about your messaging from even a seasonal perspective, for example, something that I like to do, a little activity when I'm brainstorming with clients who are thinking about their strategies from a PR and social media angle, is start with a blank page. This could be an Excel spreadsheet mapped out with the year ahead. So you label it from January to December, split that into 2 columns down the middle. And what we like to do is methodically go through each landmark occasion that you could link back to your brand. So for example, we have Ramadan, Eid, Christmas, Easter on one column. And then on the next side, you want to go and scribble some content ideas. So you've got a Christmas giveaway. Do you want to wish your followers Eid Mubarak with a picture of a crescent moon and star? So this just gets the creative juices flowing and encourages you to start thinking along the lines of a digital media strategist and a PR wizard in your own right.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done that yet for our brand, but I think that's a really sort of crucial thing to think about, because you get so caught up in everyday sort of day-to-day tasks. So it's quite interesting to hear your perspective that actually if you just plan it a little bit far ahead, then you'll be more prepared for the months coming on. Because we had UAE Flag Day just a few days ago, which literally slipped through my fingers just because I was so busy doing the day-to-day tasks.
Absolutely. And I think we now and more realize that there is really a day for everything. There's a National Coffee Day, there's a Sibling Appreciation Day, there's, Guy Fawkes Gunpowder Night coming up, there's UAE National Day on the 2nd of December, which is going to be a big one. That is so crucial for UAE brands to talk about and celebrate, because this is the big 5-0. This is 50 years since the formation of the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, so exciting, but can definitely feel overwhelming for someone who's sort of trying to manage everything. So that's a great tip. In terms of a PR agency or a PR and communications agency, what would that offer a brand? So say a small brand does have a little bit of a budget to put towards a PR agency, what can that bring to the business, and what can someone like yourself help with?
Right. So if we look at it from what a competent PR rep should be doing, the first thing is that they would, of course, bring with them a whole host of valuable journalist relationships. So I like to call it my secret weapon, which is my little black book of contacts. And those are valuable relationships with journalists that have been formed over the years. So rather than you as a small business owner starting to try and forge those relationships with commentators or editors in the global media, your public relations executive would be coming to you with those relationships in existence. So journalists, we should remember, are starved for time. They're totally at the behest of their editors. They're fighting for page space. They're trying to pitch the best stories. But if your PR has a reputation for constantly providing a certain journalist with great quality content, this journalist is then more than likely to be more accommodating of a chat with you and open the doors to a conversation with your brand. So I'll give you a little example, Sumaya, which is I represent a couple of clients in the Middle Eastern financial space. So say we have an Arab bank, for example, who has a great press release about this newfangled app that they're launching. Would you like to be named in the National? Would you like to be featured in Reuters or Bloomberg? You need to start targeting the right people. So immediately I would contact someone like Simeon Kerr from the Financial Times. He's based in the UAE. He writes for the FT, which is obviously a global powerhouse, which would be read by people all over the world in the financial space and the Politico crowd. So if I'm known to Simeon, I could quite comfortably pick up the phone to him and say, look, I've got this great brand. They're launching a new app, and I'd quite like you to have a chat with the founder of this app. And this is where we stray into that delicate territory, which is over information. So if a brand is just shooting out press releases, very wordy, kind of technical jargon that is going straight into an inbox, coming from something that doesn't look so personalized, that journalist is less likely to be accommodating. And wading through their inbox, picture it as, you know, we're all very busy, we're all scrolling through our inbox on a regular basis and refreshing that page. But if it looks like something that is personal, if it looks like something that is suitable and relevant, then all the more reason for the journalist to pick up on it. So
in effect, you're really taking away, I mean, it's years of practice and education and development on your part, really, that you're bringing all of these skills and knowledge and really saving a small business time and effort of trying to get it out there.
And the changing media space at the moment, it's so rapidly changing, which means that, you know, some journalists do change their beat. So, you know, I could be on the mother and baby beat 1 month, but maybe 3 months later, I start doing retail and motor car reviews. So what your PR can offer you is actually that current knowledge of knowing who the best people to contact are and whether they are still indeed writing about the issues that your brand is conveying.
And do you personally do you do social media strategy as well, or are you sort of more focused on PR and communications from a traditional media perspective?
Good question. I think the beauty of PR is that it's literally anything and everything to do with communicating outwards. And the social media space is such now that it's almost, you know, forming a reputation for itself as a replacement for reading the paper, that you may rather see yourself in on the Instagram of a certain journalist rather than having a clinching headline up in Bloomberg. So yes, it is very much about how you carve out your social media strategy. And that really goes down the route of the brand guidelines. You would work very closely with a graphics design team and a creative or art director. And that's really demanding of finding out what your brand image is. And that really is PR, anything to do with image.
And a lot of people now have sort of personal brands where it's no longer just the brand or the business that you own. It's sort of the people themselves are brands themselves. So like influencers, for example, or content creators. And that's interesting as well, because just out of curiosity, do they have agencies or people that represent them from a PR perspective?
Absolutely. And I mean, if your brand is so closely aligned with your intentions and your brand representation, and you've made that conscious decision to be the face of your brand, then by all means, you should be devoting time and effort to building up your personal profile and image. And whether that means having a separate page for you as a founder, separate to the product or service that you're promoting, then that is so crucial and of major importance. And that's where you do stray into tricky territory, because, you know, there's the self-promotional aspect that needs to be linked so succinctly to why you're doing it. So I know I'll give you your example, Sumaya, which is so compelling to me, which is, you know, we went back to thinking about MamaME, a wonderful app for mothers to connect. Why did you create it, Sumaya? Because of your personal story. And that's what's so endearing, is that you came to me saying, I realized that there was a problem, and there was, you know, a glaringly obvious niche in the market for mums who were starving for company and for connection in the UAE. So that immediately brings a great profound resonance between the brand and the founder.
I mean, yeah, I think after I spoke to you, because for someone who doesn't have the skills that you do, you can explain it, but it's difficult to explain it so precisely and so succinctly so that the other person will understand it just from like a sentence or two sentences, which
Absolutely.
I think you really taught me. And the other thing as well was creating my own profile and my own page was, although it takes time and effort, it was so important to do that too, to actually
Absolutely.
separate both of them.
Simplicity really is the key as well. We did talk about this together, which is, let's take it back to basics. If you can't explain your brand to me in a couple of sentences, as if you were explaining it to an 8-year-old or to your grandma, then you yourself don't understand it. So you should be able to simplify it enough for a journalist in layman's terms to be able to turn that into manageable, understandable, and comprehensive content for their readers.
And I remember reading somewhere that your pitch should be 10 seconds. In 10 seconds, you should be able to describe your business. So it's called an elevator pitch, right? Yeah. So in essence, you literally could explain it in an elevator ride to somebody, which I think when I did that, when I turned it into sort of literally a sentence, it was actually quite empowering to realize that you could really explain something in such a short sentence.
Absolutely. And we have to remember that, some of these huge multinational CEOs who you see frequently on primetime news being interviewed, their day job is not communications. So there is always a communications expert priming them up and preparing them for these major media appearances, because there are some things that they may forget about and that they may not even see as important, that someone in my line of work has to remind them about. And a lot of what I do is very much around simplification of messaging, and even doing a lot of speech writing. So, a CEO might be handling a major announcement, and behind that in the background would be me writing a speech for them and rehearsing with them, priming them up for that appearance, either before a parliamentary select committee or reminding them that there are so many buzzwords that need to be featured in there as well.
I mean, there's so much work that goes into all of this stuff. And we've only touched on the surface of what your job actually entails, because I know, having worked with you, how much work goes into this. And I'm truly sort of thankful to have met you and to have you on board to actually handle the PR for MamaME, because it's really been incredible. And I'm so excited to obviously continue working with you and see where the brand goes with you. But I'm excited to be able to bring you on the podcast to share that, you do incredible things and you can sort of help other small businesses as well, because that's really what you focus on now, helping and supporting small businesses. So it'd be incredible if you could share where listeners can find you. And are you okay if someone sends you a message and for them to just reach out and say, hi, I just wanted your opinion on this?
Absolutely. We are on Instagram. So we're called S&S.London. So it's at S&S.London, which quite funnily looks like it says sands. So it's almost like the desert sands. So you might find the odd Rumi quote or snapshot of PR life on our Instagram page at S&S.London. I'm more than happy for you to contact me directly by email, and that's seher@sns.london. Seher spelled S-E-H-R. I'm always looking forward to hearing from small business owners in particular, to offer advice on how to navigate this world of PR, which, quite usually gets mistaken for a very murky, peculiar world. So I'd really like to simplify it for small business owners and let them know that you don't need a huge fat budget, and there's so much value that can be added from having a PR agent on side.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to see what you can do. I will definitely link your Instagram handle and your email address into the show notes so the listeners can find you really easily. I know this was like so valuable for me, and you've helped me so much with our brand at MamaME, and I'm so excited for other people to be able to find more about you and learn more from you as well. And even just sharing the things that you share on your Instagram, I know will be valuable as well. So yeah, listeners, go and check her out because she's amazing. I will blow your trumpet for you because I don't think you did it enough. But honestly, Sahar is so incredibly like intelligent, and she's so incredible at what she does. And I'm so proud that I have her on my side.
Thank you so much, Sumaya. And I think the beauty of my industry and what I do is the connections that I'm able to form with founders like yourself, and the benefit that I'm able to glean and grasp from that. So I'm looking forward to being a mum myself someday soon, and that's when I will be more active on MamaME, although for now I'm more of a voyeur or an innocent bystander, but engaging with your followers and community members has been wonderful, and looking forward to many more MamaME coffee mornings and various product launches, more to come, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, we've got so many things to talk about, so we'll leave that for a different call, more business related call, but thank you again for today.
Thank you so much.